The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS. Brought to you by Kornblau and Kornblau, the official law firm of the process. BodyBio, where I am a pretty big influencer. Get 20% off any BodyBio order with promo code Norman. Say it.
Norman.
At bodybio.com. Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged. And Kinetic Skateboarding, get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver. There's some pretty cool Beetlejuice stuff I was looking at on Kinetic. A couple cool shirts. There's a Britney Spears tee that I'm going to be sending to my wife. On the show today, we have two fun guests. Spike Eskin is on an anniversary trip with his wife. Happy anniversary to them. And so we have my friend Seth Rosenthal of SB Nation, Secret Base, Posting and Toasting, just Twitter generally, who is a Knicks writer and a good young man who I have been friends with for a long time, to talk about the Knicks and what's going on with them. And then a fun, out of the blue, Kevin Arnovitz, from formerly of ESPN, now of being a screenwriter and doing very well in my other industry. He came on and we had a really lovely conversation, and he's just a real treat to talk to about basketball, about anything. He's such a fun listen. Also, during the Seth conversation, I'm getting over the flu, so at various points I basically forgot that Kristaps Porzingis existed. So my bad. That's it. We're going to play the interviews and then we're going to get out of here. CJ, play the song.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
So here we have today my friend, unfortunately, one of the longest tenured, let's call it tenured, Knicks people on the internet. I'm going to say that. Seth Rosenthal, Secret Base, formerly Posting and Toasting, father. Seth, welcome to the show.
One of the shortest tenured fathers.
Yes, that's true.
You made it sound briefly like I'm on the Knicks. Like I'm the longest tenured Nick. I'm the Nick Collison of this shit.
At this point, I do think that if you do a podcast or publicly are a fan of a team long enough, I do think you should get like a basketball reference page.
I think when the time comes, I deserve a ring.
Yeah. 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 How are you feeling about the Knicks these days?
There's a weird funk.
I'm feeling that as well.
You know what really solidified it not solidified it. I don't want to, but like what felt like it confirmed that something was off was they revealed their jersey patches the other day.
Okay.
The ads on the sleeve, and it's Experience Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
It just felt like the nail in the coffin of like, are they slightly too evil? Is it not gonna, and then, you got like sex pest Rick Brunson, like being part of the news cycle, and Mikal Bridges messing with his shot, and everyone's up in arms about that. I don't know. They look really good. They look like the best team that they'll ever be in my entire life. And I'll hopefully forget all of this within like 4 days. But if the Knicks have a disappointing season, this is me saying I felt it. And if they don't, then I didn't say anything.
That's right. What was last season like for you? It all sort of came together, beating the Sixers with an unhealthy Joel Embiid, losing to the Pacers because everybody started losing limbs. What was that? What was the experience of that for you as one of the best Knick playoff runs in at least your internet history?
The experience was very great. I recommend rooting for a team that plays deep into the playoffs. I like
I'm going to take the other path.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it. It has its merits. I'm actually trying to remember over the last few weeks, like what the beginning of that season and the one before it, where they won a series, felt like, because I think both seasons contained meaningful stretches of like, this might not be working, or even like, Tom Thibodeau might be on the hot seat, or like they need to make a big move, which I guess they did. But last season, I mean, I think you share with me that like being a playoff contender feels emotionally horrible. It is so dreadful, and I felt sick the whole time. But like, yeah, that's the most fun I've ever had watching the Knicks, and I hope to do an even better version of that this year. But like, they're very much set up where if the Knicks have a fantastic regular season and go even deeper in the playoffs, it'll be like, yeah, duh, look at the team. And if they don't, I'll be like, yeah, duh, experience Abu Dhabi. Something was off.
Well, so what? Okay, let's start with Julius Randle, because I feel like he has a little bit of a Tobias Harris syndrome in that everything was put onto him as being the piece that didn't fit, that didn't like coalesce everything together. I think he's a better player than Tobias is. But
yeah.
My impression of your impression of Julius Randle is that you appreciated him maybe more than others. Is that right? Or were you down the ready to go?
No, I think it oscillated quite a bit. I know for a fact, and one could search my text message history, possibly with you, and find confirmation of this, that like there were moments even within all-star seasons over the last couple of years where I was like, I would trade Julius Randle straight up for nobody.
Yeah.
Like I think the Knicks would benefit from having him off the team.
Yeah, we had that with Tobias. Yeah,
yeah, and I agree with that. Randle is, on the whole, a superior basketball player at this point to Tobias Harris. There were also moments, like January of this very year, where it like finally seemed like everything made sense around him, and it was working and it was clicking. And I think because of both halves of his performance and the sort of like vibe he brought to the table, it almost made you want more for it to work with him in New York. And I think something about this offseason and the fact that he was recovering from surgery and the fact that he was coming up on an extension made it sort of feel like, all right, this is going to be the year. It looked so good in January before he got hurt in that Heat game. And now he's coming back and he's like saying a lot of really heady sort of self-aware stuff. And like the vibes are going to be right this year. And I think if the trade didn't happen and Julius Randle stuck around, there would have been a moment in November where once again, Julius Randle is kind of just like shuffling around like a sad Charlie Brown and like not looking his teammates in the eye and glowering at the end of the bench and taking like weird shots that he can't hit and arguing with refs while the team's supposed to be getting back on defense. And we are reminded like, oh yeah, this guy is like kind of temperamental and miserable to watch. And it would have dipped again and he would have had no trade value and everyone wants to get rid of him. And like, it would be unreasonable for me to assume that the oscillation wouldn't continue. But yeah, it hurts. Like, yes, he was the first guy to be part of this team willingly. Yes, he had a lot of great moments. Yes, he is sort of, I feel like in the past I've referred to the Angelica from the Rugrats has been quoted saying like, they may be stupid babies, but they're my stupid babies.
Yeah.
And like, I think much more so than Sixers fans with Tobias Harris, Knicks fans kind of were like, he's our guy, like warts and all, and I want to win with him. Mm-hmm. But I suspect Wolves fans will experience exactly what we experienced. Of you also have moments of like literally, I would like him to get locked out of the building right now.
I love the Angelica quote. That's huge. That's huge for the podcast. You also lose DiVincenzo, who I was at times in the Sixers series like the second best player on the team. The vibes you mentioned, visit Abu Dhabi, but also like in that
experience.
I'm so sorry.
Get it right.
Experience. You don't have to visit
Abu Dhabi.
it. Just experience it from afar. The Knicks Wolves preseason game, Dante DiVincenzo at the line, shouting something at the bench, something at Tibbs. What was did that also start the vibe turning down a little bit? What happened there, and what was the Knicks fans' impression of why that was weird?
My understanding of what happened is that he played terrifically in that game, as he often does, because he's just one of those players you watch and you're like, I think he's just making such good choices that I have yet to witness a flaw. Mm-hmm. He doesn't make the type of decisions that lead to mistakes. He just plays within his own game. But anyway, he was playing really well and really lighting the Knicks up. And he was just trash talking with the bench in I think pretty low key, regular old NBA way. The cameras picked it up, and the cameras picked up the fact that Rick Brunson, again, noted multi-time allegation haver and father of Jalen Brunson and Knicks assistant coach, and someone who's known Dante DiVincenzo personally now, for 15 or 20 years, barked back at him, which may or may not have been playful, but then afterward, got in his face and called him a punk and said it was a sucker move for him to be bragging toward the Knicks bench and talking about how they got rid of him. And it just sucks when your team is in a tiff and you're we were clearly in the wrong. Yeah. No Knicks player seems to have participated in any interesting way, but Rick Brunson, who is really the ugliest part of the Knicks personnel right now, both literally and metaphorically, just not a good looking guy. Just got into it with an excellent former player who was playing well and is a groomsman in his son's wedding.
Did it always feel like he was, you get McHale? Did it always feel like Dante was a little bit the fourth guy out of there? Everyone's doing the Nova Knicks and Dante's kind of not really.
I don't know. I think that the immediate rumor that Dante was never quite as down with that may have been overblown. He seems to have said as much, both privately and when he was interviewed about it. In some ways, who gives a shit? But in other ways, sure. I watched the YouTube clips of the Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson podcast. I watched the DiVincenzo episode. I watched the Mikal Bridges episode when he was still on the Nets. They seem like they're closer friends with Mikal than they are with Dante. Mm-hmm. I don't Dante just had a kid and Josh Hart has kids and Jalen Brunson just had a kid. And there was this feeling that they're all kind of young men growing up together. And this is a really cool, you live in the same place as your college buddies and work with them type of vibe that I don't know. I'm really curious. And I think this will bear out with time and reporting. How much did Jalen Brunson and family know about that trade in advance? Did they have any approval over it? If things go poorly, are they going to be upset about it? I don't know, but I think maybe that DiVincenzo was the least buddy of the buddies, but I never got a feeling other than very basketball oriented, he may have been losing some minutes with Mikal Bridges around and Deuce McBride having a bigger role. Maybe his role would have diminished. And certainly there were stretches of crunch time basketball where he should have been on the floor and wasn't, especially earlier in last season. But I don't know. I think if it were anybody else and anywhere else and the cameras happened to have pointed somewhere else and literally Rick Brunson wasn't involved, we wouldn't be talking about this.
Wouldn't be a big deal. The Jalen Brunson contract signs for well below market value. How do you feel about that as a Knicks fan that's happy that somebody stayed? and that stayed for under what he could have gotten here, there, or elsewhere, versus someone who I know is also very pro-labor and someone who would be like, hey, you should get all the money that you can get.
Yeah, I don't think being a Knicks fan encompasses the best and most moral aspects of my personality.
No, I can relate to that.
Something you know very well about me is that I love the NBA draft, and the NBA draft is not okay.
Yeah.
And that tension is just part of being a sports fan.
Yeah.
I like that Jalen Brunson took a well below market contract because, in a very base way, I want the Knicks to win. And I think that helps the Knicks win. It helped them get Mikal Bridges. It helped them get Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
It will help them continue to thrive or pivot or whatever in the future. And, Jalen Brunson would point out, and as he does when he gets asked about the stuff, I took the biggest possible contract I could take, which is true right now. Mm-hmm. And I think there is an additional logical case to be made that he is a probably 5'11" superstar who could, and I hope he doesn't, twist an ankle and come back kind of funny and suddenly he's in the Isaiah Thomas zone. I don't think that's exactly going to happen. Yeah. I really don't think that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I think he has a different kind of game.
Yeah.
But it's possible that played into it too. And this isn't just purely him being a good troop. So yeah, I am very opposed to being a good troop. In this case, I happen to be a big old fan of the troops. So cool.
Yeah. No, I felt the same way.
Wouldn't do it myself.
No, I felt the same way, especially because, Thibodeau's running these guys into the ground. The idea that there would be more wear and tear on his body in a year if he's banged up or something. It's under market value, and it's understandable why people would be like, interesting. But I think it's a safe benefit for a guy who is also like the face of the Knicks, which comes with a number of promotional opportunities as well that isn't counted in the
I am only a little bit corny, and only a little bit susceptible to corniness, but I kind of believe Jalen Brunson when he's like, I really want to win. I really want to win a championship. And that's part of why I did. I want other people to come here and play with me. And
that's cool.
I don't think I think it matters that he, grew up the son of an NBA player and grew up rich and knows he's going to be fine. And I don't know. It just might be a fairly unique situation.
We take a break from, I believe this is probably going in the Seth interview, to talk about my friend Kornblau and Kornblau. Here's the situation. Are you a lawyer? Are you licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey? Do you like hybrid work? Do you have at least 7 years experience doing litigation work, preferably medical malpractice? But he's open to an attorney with lesser experience depending on fit, especially if it's the second attorney that he's hiring. Listen, here's the deal. Kornblau is hiring. He wants to hire from the listener pool of this podcast. I think that is a bold step, because I think it should be a knock against people if they listen to this podcast and also have any important job. It's a value thing. It's a judgment situation. You need to have excellent writing skills, experience drafting pleadings and motions, experience taking depositions, responding to discovery requests, trial work. This is it. But benefits wise, CJ, very competitive salary, hybrid working environment, like I said, great health insurance, 401k, opportunity for growth, get to change your name to Kornblau, and you get to interact, of course, with fellow process trusters daily. Although in this ad copy it says process thrusters.
It does say
which
that.
I also like. Email hr@kornblauandkornblau.com if you're interested. I am hoping, as we've said, that there will be 2 candidates that are neck and neck that both listen to the podcast. Then I can decide which one of them gets hired. That is the goal. That is what this podcast has always been leading to. Kornblau and Kornblau, also, you've heard it enough times. They're great. They do great stuff. We get so many emails. than Spike Reed's on the podcast about people saying, hey, I had this other separate law thing with something at not medical malpractice, which is his specialty, but like car accident or some other thing. And I just shot Kornblau an email because I know him from the podcast, and like he responds and helped him out. And like that happens all the time. That really just happens all the time. He's great. He's the best. You should work for him. If you don't work for him, if you're not a lawyer, you should, to hire him, I guess, to do your medical malpractice and everything. So Kornblau and Kornblau, the official law firm and law hirer of the podcast. Karl Anthony Towns, your feelings about him prior to the trade, your feelings about him now.
Going way back, I mean, Karl Anthony Towns is up there, funnily enough, with Mikal Bridges of like the most I have ever wanted a prospect coming out of college to be on the Knicks. I was so desperate for the Knicks to win that lottery or at least get the second pick. Were you a Towns? You were a Towns over Okafor person, right?
Well, that was that the same draft? Why am I forgetting?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was anyone over Okafor. I was Justice Winslow over Okafor. I was Mario Hezonja. I was everybody. Anybody but Okafor.
I just like have never wanted someone more than Karl Anthony Towns back when he was coming into the league. So that like,
who did you get in that draft? Who did the Knicks get in that draft?
That's the Porzingis draft.
That's Porzingis, of course.
Who I didn't want at all. I wanted Justice Winslow when the Knicks got slotted where they were in the lottery.
When he was hiding in the bathroom to stay away from Sam Hinkie.
So
good stuff.
Fuck me. Anyway, before this probably had not seen that much of Karl Anthony Towns recently. I just wasn't watching the Wolves that much. If you offered me the trade that the Knicks made, it would have been hard, but I think I would have accepted it. I think, especially after losing Isaiah Hartenstein, I think Karl Anthony Towns is, for all his foibles and all his weird, like sort of off court, like he talks funny and like he seems like a regular guy who like doesn't care obsessively about winning at basketball. I don't know. Whatever people get, I feel like people on the internet, because he like talks in a funny voice sometimes and like makes funny faces.
Sure.
Just like have developed a weird bugaboo about Karl Anthony Towns, and I might be susceptible to that.
Sure.
He is the perfect offensive complement to everything that's going on with the Knicks.
Offensively, for sure.
Ideal. And about as like I am hard pressed to come up with a better defensive answer to his problems than the Knicks, especially post trading for Mikal Bridges. Like he doesn't have to guard the best centers in the NBA if he's not equipped to do so. I don't really worry about that much. And like his tendency to get caught out on an island or get blown by is pretty well hidden by the fact that OG Anunoby is the most impressive defender I've ever seen in my life. I think it's worth it. It's worth it to see if this works. Cause like, if it does work, it will have been so obvious.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it doesn't work, it'll be like, he kind of talked in a like funny voice.
Have the Knicks had like a legit stretch five ever?
I mean, Porzingis,
sure. Yeah, obviously,
but not these Knicks, not at all. And like that was going to be the thing is like, if Hartenstein stuck around, it would have been like, you gonna step out? Like you used to do it. It might be time to give that a try. And if the Knicks never made that trade, it would be like Precious Achiuwa. Are you going to step out? It might be time to do that. That was the thing missing from the Knicks offense.
Yeah.
No matter who was on the floor playing center. And that was, they were going to give Randall at the 5 a try. And so this is basically that, except Randall has gone from being a willing, but basically below average shooter to one of the best tall shooters in human history and an even more creative passer. And roughly equivalent in terms of like head down, barrel into traffic type of ventures.
Yeah. With that Hartenstein, Mitch Robinson, I felt a little bit more relief when Mitch was on the court because Embiid had to cover Hartenstein out into that middle distance, and he seemed to never miss that push shot, that little floater. And so Brunson could just pocket pass to him over and over again. And that was frustrating. And so Embiid just really despises covering the outside shot. He just hates doing it. He resents the NBA for allowing it, I think. Watching him just be like, no, I fucking shit. But I think that's going to be a problem. I worry about obviously some rim protection against guys like Embiid specifically. I mean,
forget Embiid. I just watched them play real rotations, real minutes against the Wizards preseason rotation, and like they were having trouble. Not even Valanciunas. Like Kyle Kuzma was getting to the rim at will. Jordan Poole was getting to the rim at will.
Yeah.
Fucking Jared Butler was getting to the rim at will. I don't mind Towns from what I know and what I've seen, like on the block. Just like even moving with someone with a big guy facing up, it's more rotating to help.
Yeah.
But again, like ideally you scheme so that the last line of defense is OG Anunoby, who like I trust.
Yeah. He'll make a play.
To make stops at the rim more than Towns. But offensively, he is exactly what the Knicks needed. And like, I think they were going to miss Hartenstein more on offense than defense.
For sure.
For exactly the reason you described. Jalen Brunson does not throw lobs. It's probably his biggest like sort of missing element. And so when Mitchell Robinson's on the floor, and like he would have been the starting center if he wasn't hurt, he is not useful offensively at all, because he is the thing he is excellent at. Brunson does not really vibe with. So yeah, very different with Towns.
You mentioned Mikal's jumper. I have a lot of experience with changing jump shots and jump shots seeming weird. Do you want to talk about it?
Well, sure. However, the experience that you have is, and correct me if I'm wrong, primarily with jump shots that were never good to begin with.
Fultz was good in college.
Yeah, it was good in college. It looked really fucked up in college, but it went in.
Not as fucked up as it became.
It's certainly not as fucked up as it. Or did it? Did it not look fucked up in college?
I thought it looked completely fine. He was pulling up off the dribble. He was hitting. He shot like 41% in college. He was something like that.
Okay, fair enough. I retract. I hope this is forgotten quickly. It looks, because like, so Mikal Bridges, for people who didn't watch the Knicks Wizards preseason game, shot like 0 of 9 or 0 of 10 from downtown.
Yeah.
Across the whole preseason, he was like 1 of 12. And these were not like rim outs.
No.
Guy was hitting the underside of the rim. The sounds were unpleasant.
Yeah.
It looked really weird and really bad. I would like to believe that someone whose jumper has gone through a lot of permutations over the years, but has really never been bad. It's been going in forever. Will either start hitting that shot or adjust back. Like he wants to hit shots. So
does he want to release it higher? Is that the point? Because he changed his form before the draft. And that was, I remember, being like an kind of situation as well. And then he hit him. He's been a totally fine shooter. He's been fine ever since. He's been excellent for periods of his career. Yeah.
He is releasing it higher, I guess, or the set point is higher. And there's like, I guess not a hitch, but it is a two-step sort of like Rashard Lewis, Marcus Camby type of like up and then through. It's honestly part of my soft spot is that it's kind of how I shoot.
I don't see a problem with this. Yeah, it's actually a pretty cool way to look.
I'm not tall, but I have very long arms for my height, and it almost feels like if I try to shoot a compact shot, it like my elbows get knotted.
You got too much skin for it.
So I really understand what he's going through. I don't know. I really don't want that to be a thing. And so I'm trying to not be scared.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel like he'll probably figure it out. The Sixers used to have, you know who Jonah Bolden is, former Sixer,
Australian legend.
I used to say that he shot the hardest ball in the league because it would just come. The rim would just really recoil at the shot attempt even. And it starts, at least in that preseason game, it started.
That's when you have someone in the production truck like, whoa,
yeah,
I'm like, oh
too loud, turn it down. The Knicks, we talk about the Sixers not having made a conference finals since 2001. The Knicks have not made a conference finals since 2000, the year before that. Obviously the Sixers have had a longer stretch of like sustained success of this, at least in this current era. Where are you at as far as like expectations? You mentioned are horrible, but where are you at as far as just general feeling about how much time you're spending on the Knicks these days?
So you're talking about me?
Yeah.
Me, the human man.
Mm-hmm.
I feel good about it. I feel good about where I am with the Knicks, but they definitely tested me in the playoffs. They had nothing to do with it. I had probably the second or third sort of like come to Jesus moment of my life during the playoffs.
Yeah.
I have gotten much better. Sorry, go ahead. Jesus
watches a lot of the games with me because I'm coming to him constantly during playoff runs. Jesus.
So the first one of those of like my adulthood was actually the Mikal Bridges draft. It's when the Knicks drafted Kevin Knox.
Uh-huh.
And so at the time we're not a very good team. I went to bed that night.
Kevin Knox over Mikal.
Over Mikal Bridges, among other people.
Yeah.
I went to bed that night and laid my head on the pillow and was like, you can't be like this. Like, this is not, I was so angry and so sick about that in a way that like really informed my actual mood and how I was talking to people that I love. And I had an awakening of like, you're an adult man. Like, you gotta get yourself together. The Tyrese Maxey game 5. Yeah. Game 5 of the Knicks Sixers series.
Yeah.
Was another one of those. And after I think I have gotten a lot better at not sweating Mikal Bridges' jump shot too much and not paying that much attention to the salary cap and not knowing that much about the guys on the summer league roster and not freaking out that much about the draft. That might be a little bit me. And, I have a kid now and I just have more shit to stress me out. Or it might be the fact that I have luxury problems now, luxury Knicks problems now, and the Knicks are good. And so who gives a shit who's on the summer league team? I'm not Pacome Dadier is not going to make or break the success of the Knicks this year. He's just, if he sucks, he sucks. And if he's good, cool. But yeah, that game, I won't put too fine a point on it, but I had some real stuff going on in my life and family at that moment. And I went to bed that night after it felt it might not be as salient to you having your team win that game, but that game was over. The arena was playing the "We're Winning" music. I relaxed. We all relaxed. The Knicks clearly relaxed.
Yeah.
And then to have it probably kind of similar to game 2 on your end.
Yes, I was going to say the timeout not being called, that kind of thing.
Yeah. The feeling of blowing that put me to bed so sour about the way I was sleepless again on a night where a moral human being would have been upset about real stuff with my family. I was so freaked out about the Knicks losing that game and possibly blowing the series that I came back around to this isn't okay, you can't be like this as a 35-year-old. So we'll see if the Knicks have another season like that where I'm watching a couple make or break games a week and maybe they do even better. And maybe I'm actually wondering if they're going to win a title. I don't know. I don't know if experience makes me steelier or if I'm going to have more moments of I'm actually saying things and thinking thoughts and acting in a way that I regret. I'm mostly okay, but sometimes not.
Yeah. Well, we definitely
was game 2 basically the exact inverse of that for you?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Just brutal. Just like having your heart ripped out. This happens every playoffs. It's just a nightmare. And the Sixers have never beaten a good team in the playoffs of this era. The best team is like the Kawhi-less Raptors after he left.
Yeah.
And that's just embarrassing. And so why do we put so much stock in it when they haven't?
That shit, I do feel, and I wonder, because your regular season tends to be a little different because I think just because of Embiid.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm a very talented 82 game fan now.
That's good.
I can turn off a blowout loss or a like backbreaking, come from behind loss during January and be like, whatever, and figure it out and like get over it pretty quickly. But it was evident to me in May that I am not like that during a playoff series. Do you feel like you just slog through the regular season now and it's whatever, or does that still hurt you?
No, it hurt. I gotta be better at it. I gotta be better at it. That's the goal for this season is to grow up for once and feel the 82. The only issue is like if Embiid is like, oh, I'm going to be gone for months at a time. That is everything but that. And then both of them being Embiid and immediately Paul George.
You know what you should do?
Injured.
Have a kid. Just have a kid.
That's probably it.
Yeah,
that's as good of a reason as any, I think.
Lose sleep about something else.
Yeah.
Have like panic spirals about something else.
Yeah.
You'll forget.
Well, off that. Seth, I appreciate you. I love you. We saw Inception together in the theaters.
We
in
did.
New York.
I had a great time. What a movie.
We should see more films together in the summertime in New York sometime.
Okay.
That's a plan.
Sure.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you. Thank you.
I love you.
The Rights to Ricky Sanchez is brought to you by BodyBio, which we know is where I became very famous on Instagram for being an influencer of supplement products.
Have you seen it yourself?
I have seen it. Yeah.
Like on your feed, has it come up?
Oh, no. I think my feed knows I don't want to see myself. But I've seen it. It's me and I think 2 other girls talking about the products. They seem much more comfortable doing so than I do. But look, I do like it. I use it every time. I got another shipment coming in right now. I use Gut Plus when it's available. When it's not, I use sodium butyrate. Keeps me regular, keeps me all stable and everything down there. I take 2 a day with food.
You have to take some Elite right now to help you.
And I do have to take, I'm sick, so I would take some Elite, a little capsule. I use Elite religiously when I play basketball, which I'm not playing today because I'm sick, which is annoying. I just dump a bunch of it into a big water jug, and it keeps me from having cramps, leg cramps, which I get a lot of. So those are great. I'm just telling you what I do with them, and that's not part of the ad copy. That's just what I do. They also have Fish Oil Plus. And basically, finite resources has led to shitty farm fish practices for fish oil production, and heavy competition and rising costs leads to manufacturers constantly cutting corners. But that's not what BodyBio does. BodyBio Fish Oil Plus is an example of the complete opposite of the low quality product that can be dangerous for customers even. They're subjected to normal rigorous testing, which includes testing for heavy metals, mercury, you don't want that, oxidation, prolonged heat exposure, and more. The benefits to Fish Oil Plus, naturally occurring phospholipids, CJ. Said it right on the first try. That makes it about 25% more absorbed by your body as opposed to digested or broken down, meaning it's actually reaching your bloodstream and your organs, etc. And the most inflammatory part of the omega supplement, which includes SPMs, which is good. So if you're taking a fish oil thing, I would upgrade to this one because BodyBio has been good for me and good to us and has made me Instagram famous. Get 20% off any BodyBio product with promo code Norman, which is not written down anywhere. It is just said by me about CJ's dog, whose name is Norman, on this podcast. BodyBio, check it out.
I am not the analyst I used to be, but I'm very steeped in recent Sixers lore, and they are, as you know, I think like the most novellic, workplace drama capable team in the last decade. So I do love them. for that reason.
We'll speak on that. Let's just do it. We're here with Kevin Arnovitz. Kevin Arnovitz emerging from the depths of wherever he's been, which we'll talk about. Why are the Sixers Novelic in your mind?
Just like the past dozen years, right? Like starting with the Hinkie hire, right? And that was fascinating because by and large, that was a moment when I think most fans and sort of the populist sentiment was very against the nerds. Like, who is this guy? And yet one of the things I loved about that moment was that Sixer fans just kind of embraced the process, right? Like rather than saying like, who is this to work quantifying something that's not quantifiable or, stat boy or whatever, something out of the scout scene in Moneyball, everyone just sort of embracing that. Was largely like Joel Embiid endorsing it, but I think it was largely a statement of a fan base saying, hey, at least we now have a management in front office that believes in something. And we don't even really care what that something is. If it's go whole hog on analytics, great. If it's go whole hog on, heat culture or something more amorphous, that's cool. But I think what was really fun about that moment was watching this fan base take this somewhat inscrutable, tactical philosophy and say, yeah, we're in for it because, hey, like winning 44 games is not really a team building strategy. And so if this guy tanks us, fine, but at least it's something to believe in.
Yeah, I think we got pinned as Sixers fans in this podcast as like, oh, you're nihilists. You don't believe in anything. You just want to lose as many games as possible for some like math problem that you're trying to solve for. And eventually, if you lose enough games, then something good will happen. And I was like, no, absolutely. It's actually the opposite because we wanted to believe in anything,
right? So
much that we were willing to live through. It ended up being more because of Joel's injuries, but like a couple years of some of the worst basketball ever played in the NBA.
Which was, by the way, spectacular in its own right. There is
Absolutely.
A point where Suckitude just sort of is so spectacular in its failure that you can't take your eyes off it. I mean, it is, and it was, by the way, like they really hustled. I mean, it was kind of, they were actually a good watch in a weird way.
Absolutely. All right, so Kevin, let's dial it back. Where have you been since you left ESPN, and what have you been doing? I know some of the answers, but what do you want to tell the people?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but all to say is that it's sort of a COVID story, whereby during COVID the league shuts down. I took my usual off season during the sort of sleepy months of May, June, July. The league is not yet emerged into the bubble. And I didn't really have anything to do, so I decided to do something really stupid, which was essentially following your steps and write scripts, and with no ambition to do anything other than I need a personal project. Like you can go running for 45 minutes a day, and you can go swimming for 35 minutes a day, and then you have the rest of your day inside. And so I did it really as sort of an exercise, and wrote an NBA workplace drama that through some sort of clerical error actually sold. And but that was great. I'll have a story to tell at a cocktail party. And then what happened the following off season was it's like, oh, maybe I should write something else, and I'll try a movie this time. And then that sold. And so when it was time to sort of make a decision about that to go back to ESPN, I kind of had this early middle age moment of clarity. And I was like, God, I don't want to look back and say, hey, if I hadn't given that my full attention, maybe I could have done it. And so I decided to, like an absolute genius, 7 months before the entire industry strikes, to leave a wonderfully sort of comfortable job for the largest sports media company in the world and try instead to my hand at screenwriting. And the crazy thing is, it's kind of been a blast. During the strike, I wrote another movie, and that sold. And so now I'm in that world that you probably know very well, which is sort of development, where you're told things are going very well. Hey, man, you're selling stuff left and right. And it's like, and then the NBA workplace drama is sort of moving downfield 2.5 yards at a time, which is how these things work. It is so different from the industry that is the NBA, where like, I don't know, you can sign a guy to a $300 million max extension and redline that deal in 2 days. Right. So not so much in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
It takes a while, but
they take their time.
Yeah, so I'm just having a great time. Like I'm writing stuff that's kind of sports adjacent. It has sort of become a calling card a little bit, and but having kind of a great time. It's sort of this it's fun to be on the steep slope of the learning curve. You know, it's kind of like my process, right? Instead of it's like, hey, I was bumping along, doing well, kind of winning more games than I was losing, and now I'm in this kind of new space where I'm learning a lot about the craft of screenwriting in a very bizarre time in the entertainment industry. But I'm having like just the best time at my desk every day. It's just making stuff up is really fun.
I love it. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit, but the frustrations with the sports journalism industry, which I dabble in on this podcast, and then frustrations with the entertainment industry, which are similar and different in kinds of ways. How's your experience of that been? Or is it still all so new for you that you're more?
I have to be honest. Like I was very, very lucky. I didn't have a lot of frustrations with sports media. I mean, by and large, I had a company basically let me run around the country for the better part of 14 and a half years on their dime, telling stories the way I like to tell them. And if that meant a 7,000 word epic on some guy who stole money from the Sacramento Kings, it was great. And if it was an X's and O's piece on sort of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander learning the craft of being a point guard, like they let me do that. So like I was somewhat immune. I was one of the lucky ones. You know, I left the industry on my own accord. When I was in the industry, I got treated exceptionally well. Was that the case for all of my colleagues and peers? Hell no. Right. Like it's sad. I don't know that there will be great long form feature writing about NBA basketball in 5 years, or if there is, it'll be very rare. And that's depressing. But I think it's a reality of the industry. One of the reasons I kind of wanted to try something new was, they'll come for me at some point. Right. But I didn't have I'm really blessed. Like I'm the luckiest dude. I got to hang out in Philadelphia, like for the 2018, playoff run, and basically like eat good food on my off day and go to the facility and do a photo piece on like their new kitchen at the Sixers facility, and like Brett Brown's crazy breakfast speech program where like Robert Covington brings in his snakes and scares the crap out of Joel Embiid. And then like, here's JJ Redick lecturing his teammates on Nick Bobster's, do we live in a simulation theory? Like they actually let me do this for a wide audience. Yeah. Like I get to hang out at the Sixers facility for a week, like inside without a chaperone. It was very cool. So I didn't have those frustrations. Hollywood is just, I think it's what you're dealing with. And I think what everyone's dealing with, which is that, there was a bubble. A lot of stuff was produced for these streamers, and there's now a correction, and there's a little less of it. But that means that it's a game of musical chairs, and there's only so many, so many seats to go around, and that's kind of daunting. But I just think it's the world we all swim in. I think it's like it's pretty much everybody in every industry that's even remotely related to media. Yeah,
it is. It is. Saying that you basically signed up for the entertainment industry, being a writer, moments before we went on one of the longest strikes of all time. It's a like lifeboat to lifeboat kind of situation, burning ship to burning ship. What do you miss? I miss hearing you talk about basketball. I miss reading your writing about basketball. What do you find yourself missing when you walk past a bar and there's a game on TV that you used to be more locked in on?
It is, the NBA is just fascinating. And one of the great pleasures you have in the job that I had was you just got to really be a fly on the wall. And that's you were never bored. You get bored with the certain regimen. Hey, I'm writing the same 3,250 word feature on DeMar DeRozan that I did on some other guy, and there is a color by numbers aspect to any job. Right. But by and large, what I miss is just like, just like shooting the shit with, a really smart assistant coach or a really interesting assistant general manager who has a unified theory of something, and just listening to it and overhearing gossip I don't get to hear anymore. You forget that, when it's the water you swim in, you forget about it. And then it's sort of like you're not swimming anymore. And there are people I can call if I want to like get the scuttlebutt.
Give me a taste.
Down in the league.
Give me a taste.
Give me a taste. Yeah. But like, I miss that. I mean, you're part of a community. And that is fun. And I still kept up some of those friendships. It's been really fun to kind of, I've been pleasantly surprised by the number of people that, though I can't offer them, a plug that their offense is really smart on the Zach Lowe podcast anymore, I'm still, we still talk, and they're actually interested in me as a human being and vice versa. And it's been fun to take some of those friendships that were professional based and move them into the social realm. But I miss that a little bit. Like there is something fun about on the right Wednesday night, walking the sidelines pregame during warmups and just, it is this wonderful, like I was a big fan of, were you a Larry Sanders Show guy? Gary Shandling?
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like sort of you are backstage.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And by virtue of being backstage, you're privy to conversations other people are. And some of it's not even, give me the scuttlebutt on what this guy is. Sometimes it's just fun and weird.
Yeah.
Like it's just weird. It's funny. Like it's a workplace comedy.
Right. I only experienced that at Summer League. That's really the only time I would cover like backstage stuff. Yeah. And I was like, you're here, you're doing it.
It's just like it's funny. I mean, just eavesdropping on conversations is fun, and it's a privilege. And there are times I miss that, right?
Yeah.
I also have great respect for the NBA in that regard, and I think you'll appreciate this. And this is not to knock Hollywood, but I think because hey, you are a front office. You have deadlines. You have benchmarks you have to meet. You're going to be judged on your wins and losses. You have to come up with draft picks on the fourth Thursday of every June. You better have a training camp roster declared by the end of September. Like opening night is October 17th or 19th or 21st or whatever it is. Like you can't hide. And it has made me admire that even like the median front office executive at the 15th best NBA franchise is like really good at their job. Mm-hmm. Like it actually, like the NBA is an exceptionally well-run league. That's not to say there isn't a degree of fuckery, and there's certainly teams more competent than other teams.
Sure.
But kind of observing the way Hollywood works, it's sort of an industry that could probably use a little bit of a McKinsey, I don't know, some optimizer to come in and say, like, let's make things a little more efficient. Mm-hmm. It makes you really appreciate that, like, even the sort of average front office is like kind of well run. Like these people are pretty freaking good at their jobs. I mean, whoever you think is like the dumb GM, like that person's probably pretty smart. And in the context of the industry you and I are in now, like really smart.
Yeah, there's some real dumb ones in our industry, which is pretty fun. There's not as many like truly bad front offices. Maybe the Bulls stand out as like that feels like from a different time. Some of their moves over the last few years. As far as you said about gossip, have you been in a writer's room yet?
I have not been in a writer's room. It is my aspiration. Hopefully I'll have my own at some point. But,
yes, of course. That's really where you get the gossip and the skullduggery and all that stuff. You are just to say, you were represented. One of your managers, I believe, is my friend Aaron, who I play basketball with, and have known for and listens to this podcast.
Is he any good, by the way?
At basketball?
Yeah,
he is good. He's
right.
he's a Celtics fan, which I resent.
He's actually, what's funny about Aaron is he's a little bit of a reluctant Celtics fan. Like I think he's grateful for the success. I think he finds this team a little boring.
Interesting. Must be nice. Must be nice to be boring.
Give me his analog. Like what would be his? Who is he? Like Chuck Hayes? Is he like?
No, he plays
to like back himself in, or does he have a good at stroke? I mean,
he's got a nice outside shot. He really likes to run pick and roll. He has a very low dribble as a point guard.
Nice.
And he can sort of guard up in a kind of Kyle Lowry style way because he's gotten pretty thick as the years have gone on. He used to not be as much, but he really has a nice little handle to him. And he has a very tiny, tight crossover where he can get places. He gets hot sometimes, and the game shifts to him. So Aaron was I was his intern at Escape Artists in 2010, and he was like the assistant to the partners over there. And then we've been friends ever since. It's been a long ass time. And when he represented you, I was like, unbelievable. It's very cool. He always keeps me, I'm sick right now, so I'm not playing, but usually be playing right now and hearing updates on your career. How well is Kevin doing? How's checking in?
He's a warlock. Like the fact that he's gotten me like sold 3 things. Like it's I will follow Aaron anywhere.
Yeah, it's very good. So one time you told me, I'm fascinated by Doc Rivers specifically. And one time you told me that most coaches are insane. And there's a Doc Rivers line that he said recently. I don't know if you saw it, but he keeps giving interviews somehow. And he said he never came up short in playoffs. And that he blamed Brett Brown for like the team he inherited, even though he got to the same exact place that Brett did, losing game 7 of the second round. And so I'm fascinated by the kind of personality that is so stubborn and confident in themselves in the face of all of it. But continues to need to coach. He's been coaching NBA teams for 25 consecutive years. And it drives me insane. And it drove me insane when he was here. And now it just drives me insane from afar. And I just want to know, expand on, not Doc specifically necessarily, but what in all of your time talking to coaches, what you feel is the empty gaping wound in their heart that they're trying to fill?
I think it largely is, it is the loneliest profession, which is ironic given that you're surrounded by stimuli and you are managing up in diagonal in an owner suite, the front office. You've got 15 players. You have these massive coaching staffs now that number like almost a dozen. I mean, it's just when you take into account everybody, to say nothing of the performance. I mean, you're basically a CEO at this point as a coach. And I remember like I was talking to an NBA head coach who was, finally got the job of his dreams, like his first head coach and like job. And 4 months in, we're talking like right before, gets hired in the spring, May. And it's like, he's like, I can't even remember the last time I actually coached. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, all I do is manage. Right. I think the hole is, so there are a couple holes. One is paranoia is the defining quality of NBA head coach. Like there's that old cliche, they're hired to be fired. And it's really true. Like we can count the number of GMs that have been fired on our one hand in the last 5 years. Like they just don't get fired. They don't get blamed. Coaches get blamed, right? Like the rate, what is it, like 5-6 coaches get fired for every GM, maybe 7 or 8 now. Like I can't remember the last time a GM got like fired. Right. Oh, they step away. They go into their graybeard mode. They age out of it. John Hammond and these various roles where guys, as they get older, maybe they become the sort of the conciliary, but like they don't get fired. These guys get fired. I think for Doc, I think the 2015 Western Conference semifinals against Houston broke him in many ways. And I don't mean like broken, like made him worse or better at the job. I mean, like, I truly have sympathy on him. Like everyone gives him a lot of crap for that particular playoff series. And I'm sure we could go through and earmark about 7 or 8 bad decisions, but you can probably do that for any series. But the bad beat, like with Harden on the bench, the Rockets mount this comeback where they hit like JJ gave me a great quote when I wrote about that series, which is like sports happens. Like it was truly one of the kind of the 86 Red Sox variety. And it would have been, had it been a bigger series, had it been a conference final or certainly a final, like it was truly one of the more bizarre. And you can't, when you really drill down, like it was just one of those series where just the cosmic gods of sports just fuck you in a profound and just cruel way. And I think that because, hey, he was largely a winner before that. That was when I think the doubt, and then obviously the dynamics in Lob City, which he had a lot to do with, frankly. I don't think he managed the personalities on the team all that particularly well. And I think he'd probably say that. And he has said it, right? But I think that like I think we underestimate how competitive the median coach or player is. We talk about Chris Paul, right? We talk about guys like that who are pathological in their competitiveness. What you don't see is like the quiet competitive intensity of like, I fully expected Eric Spoelstra at this point to kind of go and take over this sort of Pat Riley role. Like, what does he need this for? Like, he's a self-actualized person. Like, he's won, he's overachieved. I think he is the answer right now to who is the best coach if you're starting a franchise with one coach. Like what do you need it for anymore, right? Like, go and you got little kids and this, that, and the other. And no, like these guys are, it's into the vein directly. They can't live without competitive combat. They can't. It is on a level that you and I can't even possibly conceive of. I think there are probably some screenwriters who are like that, and they're insane. Right? Like, and you hear the stories about them, and in any other, had they been endowed with a 6'7" frame and a handle, like, and athleticism, they'd be that guy. And I just think that like Doc is like a lot of these guys where he can't, I mean, sitting in a chair and calling a game is like both the easiest and least fulfilling work for a guy like that. I think it's just like at the end of the day, like I can sit here and talk about it for 2.5 hours, or I can go down there and actually freaking do it. I mean, Steve Kerr, I remember talking about, he started as a GM in Phoenix. And as he was sort of famously acquired Shaq for that team. And there was a certain point where I think, I said this in a conversation many years ago where, you're looking down, you're evaluating your coach on the sidelines. Is he doing a good job with the personnel I've given him? You're in the chair at TNT but you're finally just saying, like, why don't I just go down there myself? Like, I have the confidence. I certainly have the competitive drive. I have the expertise. Like, what the hell am I doing up here or out here or at home or on the golf course I need, like, they just require the competitive combat. They just do.
The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is brought to you by LL Pavorsky Jewelers. I am a proud LL customer, having gotten my engagement ring for Alyssa at LL, and also our wedding bands, which is just as important because I didn't get a ring for myself when I proposed, which I think is a little bit unfair. I should have been able to get myself an engagement ring, but I didn't. I do have one that I'm not wearing right now because I've been sick, so I have it on the table. I don't want to get it all germy and mucusy, CJ. LL is great. We have just had so many experiences where people tell us how good he is to them. And as young men, what do you know about buying an engagement ring? I would venture to say nothing.
Not a lot. Yeah, some friends are getting engaged now, and we're all discussing the buying process and how much it varies. So it's all a lot of new information, and I do feel extremely privileged that I have LL in my pocket, so to speak, with his vast array of information on this topic.
Absolutely, he is in our pockets. He's a little LL just popping out of our pockets. And we all should feel privileged to have him as a person. It's so hardest part of a jeweler is like being able to trust him. Being like, I don't know if this is good or this is real or whatever, or what actually looks good. They're just trying to sell you stuff. But LL is just like, we've been with him for a long time. I haven't seen any emails to say LL like mistreated them. So he's a guy you can trust. He's been in business a long time. Handsome young man. Lee Pavorsky, raised beautiful children. You want that. And he's a great jeweler, great guy, great hang. If you are in the market for an engagement ring or just want to get something nice for the holidays upcoming, the Cabana holidays that are coming up, CJ, you should give him a call, pay him a visit, 215-627-2252, or visit him in the store, 707 Walnut in Philadelphia. He's the best. He's the best. He treats us well. He treats our customers well. CJ's been thinking of a tagline for LL this whole thing, and so I'm gonna hit it to him. LL Pavorsky Jewelers
has a plan to vote in 16 days.
There you go. What do you think about Nick Nurse?
I love Nick Nurse because Nick is a mad scientist, and like I just love, like, he's like the Mike Mussina of coaches. Like, throw any pitch at any count. Like, doesn't matter. 1, 2 guys. Oh yeah, sure. Any location. And I just love that Nick is that Nick will absolutely do anything and does not care, right? Just is completely unafraid of being wrong, possibly even to a fault. I think he probably has less risk aversion than most of the coaches in the league. And by the way, like, and he knows it, right? Like, I mean, he does revel in that persona. Like, he likes that we talk about him in those terms. Like, that's important to him. But I think it's like, it's going to be a fun season for you guys, I think.
What do you think? What do you think about the Daryl Morey, Nick Nurse pairing? It's a personality rich pairing between the two of them.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, Daryl doesn't get enough credit, I think, for being, for a guy who's perceived to be wed to this dogma. Right. In his way, and he invented, he's the Moneyball guy. Like, he's incredibly flexible about a lot of stuff, and oddly knows what he doesn't know and defers on what he doesn't defer to. Like, I think it's sort of, there's some big bore things that are important to him, that you value the players the way he values them. But once you get past that, like, I think it makes sense. I mean, look, Nick came up under the Rockets. I think it was Nick's, like, risk assessment as a coach just on the granular issues of basketball that made him attractive to Daryl in the first place. Daryl wants somebody who's going to be a swashbuckler, who will, at least intuitively, even if he's not doing it with any sort of, formula or regression or whatever. Obviously, you're a coach, right? But like who I think, sort of the Earl Weaver thing. Earl Weaver, manager of the Orioles in the 70s and 80s, right? Like, by the way, like profane, just as populist and gruff as anybody, a guy who probably never picked up a calculator in his life. But 10 years before kind of Bill James was doing what he was doing, the guy just intuitively know I'm going to get 2 guys on base, and then there's going to be a big guy who can hit 45 home runs a year, and he's going to drive him in. And that's how you win baseball games. Fuck this bunting. Like he knew this stuff. And I think Nick very much, Nick is much more cerebral than Earl Weaver ever was, but I think Nick intuitively, and he gets what the program is and has a willingness to, push chips in big bet, high leverage situations, and isn't afraid to do that. And I think Daryl needs to function with a coach like that. And I think, but Daryl's kind of oddly flexible. Like he's not hard to work with when you talk to people who work with him. Like he's not a guy who's difficult to work with. I mean, Elton could go and be the number one grand poobah for a franchise. He has had those offers.
Yeah. Why
does he stay? It's not just, he has a good life in Philadelphia. He's from the Northeast. It's an agreeable place to work. The roles are well delineated. He knows what his job is. He gets compensated very well and works in an environment that accentuates his strengths. And Daryl's not that difficult to work with. The James Harden thing notwithstanding, and that's its own friggin' Megillah. So you kind of have to put an asterisk next to that. But I think it'll work well until it doesn't work well. Mm-hmm. It's like every other pairing, right?
What do you think about, because I think we've talked about this on the podcast, but I think Daryl would reacquire James Harden right now if the cost was right.
Oh, I think Daryl would if the cost was right, I think he'd bring in anybody. I think he has said it himself. Culture is a 7-game winning streak. And I think their resentment doesn't factor into performance unless it does. And if it does, you consider it. If it doesn't, you don't. And I totally agree with you. And that's kind of what makes him him. If the value were there, if it cost him less than the value he felt he was accruing by acquiring that player, of course he'd take it.
And it's so interesting because it's like, it is at the same, it's very almost Zen-like in knowing your place in the world, but it's both very human and forgiving and thoughtful, and also so emotionless.
Yes.
That after what happened, I do think that he would still make a call and inquire about it and trade some stuff of value to bring him back and assume it work. That is the ultimate Daryl conundrum, is that he is a human being, but sometimes maybe it is just putting winning so far past anything else that is what we strive for. But it is an odd type of thing that is almost exclusive to him, I feel like.
Yeah, he's a delightful weirdo. Although I think the league in general is less operated on grudges than we would realize. The marriages that are made and hitched. I don't think I think personality conflicts relative to probably other industries are more tolerated in pro sports. And maybe it's because of the things I said earlier about hey, you got to win. We need 54 wins to have a shot at, even have a shot at hosting a second round conference semifinal series. Okay. So what's the formula? I don't care. And I do think obviously, his orientation is more devoted to that principle than anybody else's.
Yeah, there's a lot of grudges in your new business of people who won't work with people anymore.
No, the protection of relationships and the terror people have in offending anybody is sort of, I think, again, really hard when you come from both. I come from not just journalism, but the NBA. I didn't obviously work in the league, but I have internalized the governing principles of the league and its norms. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of that is one thing about the entertainment industry is bizarre. People, they're terrified to even kind of give you a note that might even be perceived. And maybe that's just that they've dealt with writers who are insane, and writers are crazy people ourselves. So maybe, hey, I've done that one time too many, so now I'm just not going to be straight with you. But like, nobody really talks all that truthfully.
Yeah.
There's always a protection of, I don't want to offend this person. And by the way, what's ironic is in the process of trying not to offend, you actually offend.
That's right. That's right. That is what it's like. I just wanted to, I know you said, you warned me ahead of time that you're not fully locked in on everything these days, NBA wise, but Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, Joel Embiid, how do you feel like
Shot creation. It's a thing.
Yeah.
They haven't had that a lot over the years. They haven't. It's fantastic, isn't it?
I'm health permitting.
Health permitting. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's what's so, it's like the vagaries of the league are so freaking cruel, and they've been so cruel to the Sixers. And it's like, it's like you can sit here, you guys could do this show every day. Like you could explore every possible scenario. And at the end of the day, it's sort of like, hey, is Paul going to be well on May 1st? Is Joel going to be well on May 1st? Like, and that's really what it comes down to, right?
What do you think I'm interested to see to hear how you feel about Joel, because he's closer to the end than the beginning. And how do you think that history is going to remember Joel and his mark on the league?
I think in some ways he's sort of, he's a pivotal figure in this sense that, look, I mean, the era of the big is over for the most part. Now, I say that even as Nikola Jokic is still regarded as the best in the league, but it's sort of, I think that, just a guy working down low in any capacity other than sort of facilitator or unicorn in Jokic's case is just over. And I think he is this transitional figure who, like, the truth is I think history will be a little cruel. He will be beloved. His talent is unquestionable. This game wasn't designed for guys to play 82 games and take that beating when you're a player of that size and you exert that kind of weight on your legs and feet and spine. And yet I think there's also this sense that big guys don't, unless it is a Jokic situation, like big guys largely don't win anymore. Right. Like that's not the centerpiece to a 2 championship, even mini dynasty, right? I mean, look at what the Celtics are doing. That I think by and large, the Warriors, in some ways, Denver's sort of this outlier and Jokic is an outlier. But I think we are now, like when you and I were growing up, it was just understood if you didn't have a big guy who could dominate, you were pretty much screwed. Unless you were, you were MJ, right? Like that you needed a presence down there. And I think that all the things we were talking about with Hinkie and like, the whole Moneyball and small ball era and like that he is the last of the Mohican. In many ways, and that it's just exceedingly difficult when you consider both the way the game schematically has changed and the physical demands of being a guy that size, that at some point you just can't log more than 1,600 minutes before, the car's got to go into the shop, right? And you're going to get hurt and you will not be well in May. You will not ever be at maximum physical strength. And that's what drives me crazy. I've been on that, I've been on my little crusade for years about shortening the season. It's not just, I feel bad, but I just want guys to look good when the games matter. It's like, and you can't do that. And it's just understood that come May or June, it's just really a war of attrition. May the healthiest team win. And yeah, they're obviously execution's important, but I would love a league and a sport kind of like with a European schedule where a guy like Joel, where his 50th game of the year is actually a deep playoff game, like rather than it being like early February, or I'm exaggerating, March or whatever it is, right? Like, but I think he'll go down as like the last of the Mohican, just a guy who was a standard bearer for a very good team for a very long time, but not a great team unless something happens this season. And hey, they could surprise. I mean, again, health contingent. It's just like one of those probability problems. Like, okay, what do we rate? What's the percentage that Joel is above 85% come May 15th or Memorial Day even, right? Conference finals. The answer is what, 50%? 40%. Okay. Now multiply that by Paul George, who's a guy who's who is consistently, battling injuries. Okay. Maybe for him, it's 65%. Well, you do the probabilities. Like what are we talking about? There's a 1 in 4 chance that both of those guys are 85% or better. And if there is, like, hey, they're in it. And if not, but that's what I think Joel will be. It's just like the last of Mohican, just a delightful player, a defensive stalwart at a moment when the league to the extent it even values defense, it's switchability, but not like a big guy who's protecting the rim, right? Like he's just the last in the Mohican.
Did you watch him in the Olympics?
I didn't. I did not. I have this weird thing with the Olympics, Mike. Like, I only watch sports where winning this event is the pinnacle of the sport.
Yeah.
So, like, I limit myself to like diving and swimming and track and friggin' judo and stuff, which is actually judo. I got very into judo. But I oddly, even though I'm a basketball guy, like I always find the Team USA storylines. I know this sounds crazy and verboten. I just find it not compelling. Like, yeah. Like I'll tune into a little of the Serbia, but like, I don't know. It's not as much as we say it's just not the pinnacle of the sport. So it's like, okay, I'm this massive pro tennis fan. Like I travel to go see non-Grand Slam tennis tournaments, but I'm not going to watch any Olympic tennis because who cares? Unless it's Nadal and his, in his heyday, it's sort of in his last hurrah, his swan song. But like, I just don't watch sports in the Olympics where it's not the pinnacle of the sport to win that competition.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way. Last question. We got. I'm such a role player guy. The Sixers have had a lot of role players not deliver over Joel's prime. This is now probably the best equipped team outside of, on top of Maxey and Paul George. Guys like Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond. How do you feel like what their role in the team and what they provide to the team? The glue that like fuses these, obviously Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre are going to start, but the glue that fuses these three tentpole players together, I'm just intrigued by like their role on the team and with the veteran presence and awareness and two-way play that they bring to the team. What do you think about that?
I'm a huge Caleb Martin guy. Like I love that kind of guy, the kind of the tweener fulcrum.
Yes.
The 6'5", 6'6" guy who can defend, knows his limitations, which is always my favorite role player, like quality, the kind of, the Chuck Hayes, Matt Bonner. I will invoke Chuck Hayes whenever I have.
Sure. A Daryl guy.
I mean, I just will invoke that any day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a huge Kelly Oubre guy.
You've said that before.
Not the most linear thinker.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a huge Kyle Lowry guy. I don't know how much he has left, but maybe enough. And also like Kyle's like Kyle can manage a game for 17 minutes if need be. I'm not a huge Reggie guy. Like I do think there are sort of some, I mean, sort of the Reggie, Eric Gordon, I got an Andre Drummond. I mean, I'm sort of a, kind of the brand name fallen star kind of hanging on. Like I'm not a huge fan of that. Like I much prefer sort of the Miami Heat. Who the hell is this guy? Oh God, he's incredibly effective and efficient and sort of useful. I'd rather, and by the way, there might be some of those guys that I just don't know. And part of it is I'm not as much attuned. Yabusele might be a guy like that. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Like it's who the hell knows, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are people on the roster that, Daryl obviously likes to sort of maximize the lower end. I mean, that was always a part and parcel of what he did in Houston and elsewhere. I mean, it's part of the program, but, I mean, I'm neutral. I am a little like I'd rather see more 25 and 26-year-olds who, hey, off the scrap heap who've been undervalued than 35-year-old guys who are playing out the string. But then again, like I'm also a believer that old guys win big games, right? Like that's sort of that. Actually, when you look at the best teams, it's usually they're composed of the big three plus a bunch of old Tristan Thompson-y type guys who are 35 and brand names, and it's because they know how to win and they've been around, and incompetence isn't an issue, right? Like, so maybe, what the hell do I know? Yeah,
Nick Batum was so helpful in that kind of role last year for the Sixers, and Lowry was as well, and now he's staying on for another year. I'm just so interested by the kind of, like, I loved how Vince Carter's career sort of like eased to a stop. I thought that was just beautiful, and how he adjusted his game down in a way that like Iverson didn't, and a lot of guys can't. And Lowry obviously was never the kind of star that those players were, but him being here provides a level of obviously like cerebral quality, but also just, I don't know. I feel safe when he's there.
Oh, totally. Like that guy is, I mean, because look, I mean, Maxey can't play 82, or maybe he can. He's probably one of the few guys who can, but he, he's dealing with issues. And that is a guy who is just the best spot starter. Like for that capacity, I absolutely love him. Like he will manage a game. He will identify on a Wednesday night against Atlanta, what is available, right? Like, what is available? Okay, this is a terrible pick and roll defensive team. I'm just throwing that out. I haven't studied the Hawks pick and roll defense recently, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that basically 8 straight times.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to get, we are going to get 14 points, right? Like he's just a guy who can, he will see what's available. And what I like about that is, like, you do need wins. Like, at the end of the day, like, you don't want to be seeded 5th. Like, you want to be seeded 2nd or 3rd, right? In this conference. And he can do that against a non-serviceable opponent that you need to beat on the road, on the second night of a back-to-back. And that's where I love Kyle Lowry. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, this was a delight. It was extremely enjoyable to hear you talk about basketball again. Come back anytime, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your screenwriting journey as well.
I loved getting this text. This was wonderful. As you know, Rights to Ricky Sanchez is an iconic listen for me. Like, what you guys have been doing over the years is one of my favorite things. It's just so particular, and it's so specific, and it's unlike anything else. And so I was thrilled to get the text.
Kevin, what a joy.
Talk
to you soon. Bye-bye. Well, that was great. I had a good time. I am covered in sweat from the first sitting up straight I've done in 3 days, but I think I held it together mostly. But the season starts soon. This is the last podcast before the season. What do you have to say about that, CJ?
I have to say that I couldn't tell you were sick until you told me. Okay. So you hit it well.
All right, good. Good. Well, hopefully everybody's healthy. Hopefully they don't embarrass us against Milwaukee. We'll be on after the game, provided I get out of work in time. And we're here. We're doing it again. We've done another season. This is it. This is it begins. And it doesn't.
I guess I can say October 20th right now. We have an election coming up. You guys should get out and vote.
Get out and
vote.
Sure
you're registered.
Register to vote. Early voting. Plenty of places wherever you live. Get out there, do it.
Up and down the ballot.
Yes. We love down the ballot, don't we?
Absolutely. That's where it matters.
CJ, you were just on a trip doing some down ballot action. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And the next morning coming on and producing this podcast.
That's why we do this.
That's why we do it, man. All right. Season starts on Wednesday. Let's not embarrass ourselves. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah, lickface.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me,
then I won't fuck with you.
But if you fuck with me,
I'm gonna fucking kill you!
That's the plan.